yeah, maybe you can't pay all of these guys. I get that. Like you might not have that much money, but like you can pay enough to get guys that move your organization forward and develop at the same time. Like there's been for so long, at least I don't know, I want to say in the last 15 years, right? That you and I have really been in the weeds of this stuff. Like it's always been like you're either going to go buy the players or you're going to develop the players. You can do both. The Los
Yeah.
Angeles Dodgers do it.
hmm Well, and I think even to emphasize too, it's not like Shohei's going to be the guy that so many people think about. Freddie Freeman, um, Mookie Betts, but obviously they traded for Mookie first, and then were able to sign him for a long-term contract. Also, what people don't give them enough credit for is Teoscar Hernandez. They signed in the 2023-2024 offseason, right? He was coming off a year with a 741 OPS, a 435 slug, where he spent time in Seattle and played every day and just 26 home runs. He was a good player, right? Not a great player. So many people look at a guy like Teoscar in Los Angeles was like, how did they get him? Because then he comes back the next year, hits 33 pumps, you know, 840 OPS, 500 slug, 270 average. It's like, yeah, well, every org could have had him on a 1 year deal, right? Like in 2024. And then obviously he didn't have a great year this past year. But like that's what's also savvy about them. Blake Snell didn't have like the historic, he obviously has had stretches in his career where he's been unbelievably dominant and he wasn't
He was
particularly
banged up a little bit
healthy.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's Blake Snell to a certain extent as well. Is you're happy if you get 120 innings, considering you even gave them 61. They didn't have to go sign him, right? And they understand that those free agent signings of guys that they trust in terms of their track record, they can get those guys below market. Sure, do they push all the chips in when they have an opportunity to get a Freddie Free, get a Otani, but being able to keep Max Muncy around for as long as they've been able to, right? Like there's so many savvy moves within the confines of spending money that allows them to consistently do what they do. Again, another piece that I'd like to point out is Emmett Sheehan got big outs for them. That's a homegrown player, right? So we can sit here and we can poo-poo how much money they spend, and it's bad for the sport, and it's the no different than the Yankees when there was no competitive balance rules and they were just throwing money around just for the sake of throwing money around. And I think that they are a lot more savvy than people give them credit for and how they go about the use of that money. And that's not just in deferrals and things like that. It's the ability to trust Teoscar Hernandez's track record and invest in that with an opinion that he's going to return to form. Right? It's an ability to trust Blake Snell that even if he gives you 61 innings, he's going to get you outs in the postseason. Right? Whether it's a game like the Phillies when he was dominant, he goes out and lays a couple eggs, but then he comes in relief and he's really effective and really good when it matters most. So that's another piece of the puzzle, I think, as well. And then the last thing I'll say, because I know you got something to say on this, the other thing they've done a really good job of is they aren't afraid to trade their prospects. And I know I said that already. The ability to have faith in your development for the next guy, your drafting, your signing, your international signings, your scouting, the ability to trust that, hey, we're going to trade our 1, 3, and 5 prospects and get really aggressive on this person that we think is going to get us over the top. Whereas everybody else clutches their pearls like prospects are the next best thing. And you mentioned the Phillies, you mentioned the Yankees. And again, I'm not here to have revisionist history of who Volpe could have been traded for or who Stott and Baum could. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's just the belief that they'll find the next guy, and they know how important that guy is in terms of an addition to the clubhouse, to what their ultimate goal is. And it's just that belief that we don't have to clutch our pearls on one really good prospect or 3 really good prospects. And we're willing to give an extra bit because we know that A, we're going to find the next guy, B, it's a return on investment. So sometimes people don't understand, like, sure, you're going to trade a stud. I mean, they traded Michael Bush. Like that return on investment has not been good for them. Michael Bush has been really good and effective in Chicago. They had no problem pulling the trigger and trading him because they believed that they were going to be able to replace Michael Bush in some way, shape, or fashion.
Yeah, and you mentioned trading Kybert Ruiz, who's one of the top catching prospects in baseball. Dalton Rushing. He's a Dodger. Like, oh, okay. Like, because exactly. Like, if you're, and that's always what drives me nuts a little bit about these organizations is they're so risk adverse, right? And so taking like the fear of not getting the return on investment of trading a prospect and he turns into a Michael Bush or letting a Corey Seager, whatever it may be, the Dodgers understand that there is a risk in not making those moves as well, which is what I think a lot of organizations don't take into consideration. Yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
risk in signing Blake Snell because injuries and volatility and and whatever it may be, if you're going to give him money, a free agent deal, for what he's looking for, what they end up giving him, what he's asking, there is a risk in that for sure. There's also a risk in not signing those type of players. Imagine if you don't have a Blake Snell. How much different does this team look? Does this series look if you don't sign him? Who's gonna be in that spot? Is Emmett Sheehan having to be the starter? Now you're one pitcher. Now you're bumping guys up the chart. Now you are having to lean on maybe a 40-year-old Clayton Kershaw who clearly was at the end of the rope when we saw him in the playoffs, right? Like just not doesn't have it anymore. Like there's risk in that, and that's what organizations don't I think enough times take into account is the risk in not making that move, not making that decision. You're so risk adverse, you're not seeing the other side of it because it's easy to say, well, we didn't sign it. You don't that world doesn't exist. There isn't an alternate universe you can look at where you see it unless you look at the Dodgers. Turn the Dodgers on and there's your alternate universe if you do go make that move, if you do go make that, Teoscar Hernandez. Well, how many teams do we look at and say, man, they could use a right-handed hitting power outfield bat? Like you said, 2 off seasons ago, there was one who, look at his track record in Toronto. He went to a notoriously, offensive graveyard in Seattle where everybody's numbers dip off. I don't care who you are. And had a year where he still hit 26 homers. And the Dodgers looked at it and said, that guy fits a need. 29 other teams needed that bat. They didn't take it. The risk they took was not signing him. And so many times we don't look at that, and the Dodgers are willing to make those moves and sign those players. And it's just money. Like they have an ownership group who has a ton of money, and they realize that it is just money. Like at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, you can always work around it. Like that's what's crazy to me about these. I mean, we're talking about professional sports organizations. You do not own one if you don't have the money to compete. I'm sorry. And like you said, there is such thing as a competitive balance. There is. It exists. And the Dodgers are just like, we'll pay it because it's just
Mm-hmm.
money. We can make
Yeah.
more. We can get more. We'll sell a portion of our ownership rights and to somebody. We'll sell 2% of this organization. How much is 2% of the Dodgers worth? Look at that influx of cash they're just going to get in to be able to spend. There's ways around it. There's deferred money. Yeah, they've just done a beautiful job. I mean, again, and like every point you've made is spot on. Yeah, trade your prospects. We sit here and talk about it all the time. They're prospects. You realize
Mm-hmm.
how I always laugh at the people, and I don't want this to sound
They're
degrading, but like,
volatile.
yes, and I always laugh at the people who love the prospect stuff, right? Who
Yeah.
dive in and like can't get enough of the prospects and the rankings. We're re-ranking them, and that's great and it's awesome and it's fun to look at. And it's fun, but you're dreaming on them. Like then some of these guys come up, guys like Anthony Volpe, and there's a million of them, and you realize just how good the guys that play at the big league level are. And it's like, oh yeah, I looked at this prospect and I dreamt on how great he could be in the tools and everything, and it's fun, and I get that, but it's like then you realize it's like they're just prospects, and if you are as good as you think you are, like you said, you will draft in the next year a guy who you can get just as excited about.
Yeah, and to kind of play, because I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. I don't know necessarily if I believe this as much as I'm going to say it, but as I look through their 40 man and things like that, there's a couple things that I do want to point about that is a benefit of being as well off as they are. And you make the point that we're not going to sit here and compare, count the pocketbooks of rich, wealthy MLB owners of orgs, because you have to be really rich and you have to get into that position, even if you are, the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Tampa Bay Rays. The one thing that the Dodgers have the luxury of doing, because they have so much, I guess you could say money, but they've made good decisions here and there, is if Blake Snell signed with, let's just say, another team. I don't even want to pick out a specific team. I mean, I guess the Diamondbacks is a great example, right? They go and they push all the chips in, they go and grab Corbin Burns because they don't have the depth that the Dodgers have, they can't afford to only get 61 innings out of that guy and still be a 93 win team, right? The Dodgers made a really bad decision in my mind letting Corey Seager walk. Their starting shortstop right now is Mookie Betts, an aging Mookie Betts, and their outfield isn't very good. This team would look really good if they just, instead of trying to piece and letting Corey Seager walk, who has had, who's almost been a better second half of his career player than he was in the first half of his career. This team would look a lot better if they just kept Corey Seager, kept Mookie in the outfield. Does that save Mookie's offensive abilities? All those things like that. Roki Sasaki, like the book's still out on whether he's going to be anything more than a high leverage reliever, or if he can actually be the effective starter a lot of people thought he could be. Now, when you have guys like Yamamoto, Ohtani, even an aging Clayton Kershaw who can go out and at least compete. You've developed the Sheehan. You've been able to go and get a Glass now, who's another guy who's dealt with injuries. Like, they're able to take risks on guys that are more injury prone, right? Like a Glass now, like a Snell, inconsistently prone because of the nature of how they spend money, right? I do think that's a part that, but if you think that other teams can in fact do the same thing and build up the depth over the years, then yeah, heck yeah, that's definitely a model to follow.